Hey there, my name is Krista Labelt and I'm the resident artist and owner of Sea Witch Collectables in Mater's Cove, Nova Scotia. It's been a really long winter and I can hardly wait to open my shop at the end of April. I've been really busy making all kinds of cool things for when you come to visit me. I wouldn't be able to create all the things that I do without the excellent suppliers that I use for the raw materials. ArtResin is just one of them, and I use that product for all my resin needs. I love ArtResin because of how safe it is to use. It's non-toxic when use is directed, with no VOCs, no fumes, and no solvents. No respirator is needed. It's non-flammable and non-hazardous. It's easy to use with its 1-to-1 mixing ratio and is self-leveling. And best of all, it dries to a clear, hard, beautiful, non-yellowing finish. In February, ArtResin presented me with a challenge and sent me the resin to create something unique. Given the fact that spring is here, I decided to make a little something seasonal. Here's a little hint. Here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail. Hippity hoppity, Easter's on its way. Hopefully that gives you some idea of what you might be going to see. So here it goes. Now this is the very first video that I've made of a process, and so you'll have to bear with me. Few flubs and maybe a few errors in my voiceover, but I'll get it in time. So the first thing that I did was place the ArtResin in a warm water bath to help to reduce the number of bubbles that would be in the final product when I pour. When working with resin, it's always important to remember safety first. So before I start mixing my resin, I put on a pair of gloves to keep my hands protected. It's always good to work in a well-ventilated area, and although ArtResin has no fumes, for those of you with sensitivities, you may want to wear a respirator when you're doing this work. When mixing ArtResin, it's 50% hardener and 50% resin. It's important to measure carefully. Accuracy in your measurement is important to ensure that your resin properly cures. Once you have your resin and hardener poured, it's important to stir for a minimum of 3 minutes, scraping the sides and the bottom to ensure that your resin and hardener are mixed thoroughly together. Now we come to the fun part, which is mixing the colors. For the white, I used Hemway powder pigments in Pearl White. The first color that I mix is Arteza Turquoise. This is a mica powder and it blends beautifully with resin. The next color I'm using is Arteza's mica powder in Rose Pink. And finally, I use Arteza's light gold mica powder. Once all the colors are mixed, I can begin the first part of my project. For this part, I've used Black Diamond Luxe Gold mica powder. Now I'm ready to pour the resin into the mold, being careful to scrape the container, fill all the spaces, and use up all of the resin. This part of the project will be used as an accent piece for later. But I decided to glitz it up a little bit with some glitter that I got at Michael's, and you'll see that I went liberally with the glitter. I wanted to incorporate well into the resin, so I stirred it in. Now I'm ready to move on to the main piece of the project, and so I decided to get rid of some of the bubbles by torching them lightly prior to starting to pour. I've laid out a large piece of cellophane in advance, and now I'm going to pour the resin directly on the cellophane in a circular pattern, making a circle large enough for the finished product that I'm looking to make. The resin will flow out a bit, so I keep that in mind as I'm pouring. Again, I'm going to use a torch quickly to get rid of any of the surface bubbles. And then I work to glitz up the edge with some plastic diamonds. I always love this part. It's always fun. Little sparkle. Never hurts anyone. And now it's time to add some color to the white resin. I drizzled the gold first in a random pattern around and round, and as it lands in the white resin, it expands and it incorporates and makes a wonderful and amazing abstract pattern. I pour the turquoise next, and I do it in the same pattern as I did with the gold. And last but not least, the rose pink. This is a beautiful color. As I was finishing up with the rose pink, I figured it could use a little bit more gold, and so I used up the rest of the gold. I never waste any of my resin, so I used it to make a few small things that won't be part of this project. And as I was finishing the gold, I realized that I needed a little bit more sparkle, and so I used holographic glitter from Michaels to add a little oomph again on the outside. So when I finally decided it was sparkly enough, it was time to give it one final torch before I put a lid on it and let it cure for 4 to 6 hours so it would be hard enough for the next step. Your resin area should be a constant 75 or greater degrees during the curing step for accuracy in timing. In the end, mine took 5.5 hours before it was ready to go. So now it's time for the fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is you'll see me lifting the cellophane with the resin on it, and I'm about to drape this over a mold that I have made for this purpose. What it is it's a bowl of the right size and shape that I want for the finished product, and it's elevated on some other containers that I have to make it up high enough so that the actual resin on the cellophane can drape. And I'm going to move it around a bit now to get it in the right place so I'm satisfied with the positioning. And once I have the position that I want, I'm going to start playing around the edges to get it to fold and drape and actually mold it into the shape that I want it to cure in. At this stage, the resin is fairly soft and a bit tacky, and so you want to avoid getting any on your fingers or your clothes. And you want to for sure keep the cellophane from touching it because it will stick and it may disrupt the pattern that you're trying to make and achieve. You can see the bottom here, how the color has molded and blended together and spread out a little bit. It's very cool. You see now I'm doing some folds, trying to get just the shape that I want. And this is considered resin sculpting. So basically the resin will sculpt the way you want it to while it's soft, and I want to get it in just the right shape so that when I walk away from it this time and I leave it overnight, it will harden and cure in this shape. As I show you the draped item, you can see that holographic glitter and what a difference that makes on the edges. It sparkles. Also see how the colors have blended so beautifully. Now I walk away while this cures and begin the third piece of the project. For this piece, I've outlined again with holographic glitter, and I'm going to use the same white and 3 other colors to create a long fin piece. The resin will spread a little bit as it cures, and I wanted to keep it in that long thin strip, and so I'm placing a sort of a stop beside it of some rulers on either side, so it will keep the resin from flowing past the size that I want, and so it'll just keep it all there contained. This is one of those projects where you can never go wrong with more glitter. Here we are the next day, and I'm ready to peel the cellophane away from the piece. Once I remove the resin bowl from the cellophane, I put a hole in either side of the bowl, and we're ready to move on to the next stage. Here it is, pearl inside, beautiful on the outside. And here's my unmolded little friend I'll use a bit later. I apologize as I completely forgot to video the unwrapping of the flat piece, but I folded it in half and attached it to the bowl as a handle. Here you see I've used some trusty clothespins to hold it together as it cures. And once the curing is complete, voila, beautiful Easter basket. And as promised, here's that little accent piece, the Easter Bunny, nestled in the basket with goodies. The basket is unique and one of a kind, and I love how it looks all decked out for Easter. See how beautifully the colors blended together to make just the right tones for Easter? Happy Easter, everyone. To see more goodies from Sea Witch Collectables, visit my website, seawitchcollectables.com.